Hello again. This is Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. I'm joined this evening with Pete Brownell, one of our board directors here at the Iowa Firearms Coalition, and obviously is a little involved in the Brownells Corporation. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, everybody. I'm Pete Brownell. Was CEO of Brownells. Now I'm sitting on the board, and I got a good team of people running the show, and I'm spending a lot of time making sure everybody around the country and in some cases around the world understand what freedoms we have here, primarily knowing what the Second Amendment's about. So we're out there fighting a good fight, trying to make sure everybody that wants to own a firearm can, and they can do it safely, understand what civil liberties they have, and trying to share that around the world as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sure we all do. One of the topics that I'd like to go, actually the topic for this video, revolves around what we're calling the Freedom Amendment here in the state of Iowa. And it's the right to keep and bear arms. Iowa is one of 6 states in the nation that doesn't have this fundamental protection enshrined in our Constitution or any kind of amendment thereof. And I'm assuming, from what I can tell, that when the framers put it together here in the state, they said, well, we have the Second Amendment on the federal level. Why would we need to even bother with that on a state level? And that was probably a reasonable thing to think at the time, but boy, things have changed. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, you know, what's interesting, if we're going to say, what are the other 5 states? People could probably say, well, it's going to be New York, Massachusetts, California. You'd be wrong on all accounts. Even the great state of California and its reputation, and New York for that matter, with its reputation of being not friendly to firearms, California for sure has this as an individual right in their constitution, and yet here in Iowa we do not. Yeah. And I think a lot of that's we're Iowa nice, we're reasonable individuals, and I would agree with all of that. But we see a bifurcation happening. And if it happens at the federal level, since we're Iowa nice and we're law abiding, everybody is, we're going to apply to whatever the federal law is, as good citizens would, until they come in conflict with a state right or a state law. And this is why it's so incredibly important to have the Second Amendment as defined for Iowans by Iowans in our Constitution. Yes. So we have that 10th Amendment firewall that says, hey, wait a second. I don't care what craziness goes on at the Fed when it comes to my individual rights. I want my state to have enshrined in its Constitution the rights that we as citizens here want to live under. And the individual right to own a firearm and exercise our Second Amendment and those freedoms is definitely one of them.
Well, no doubt about it. I look back at the Heller decision, and it haunts me to think of that as a 5-4 decision. Mm-hmm. While we kind of look at that and say, yeah, that's typical, that doesn't surprise me, the people who neglected to put the right to keep and bear arms in our state constitution would have thrown up on cue if they could have looked forward and said, oh, on a federal level, they're going to look at things like this, and it's going to be 5-4. We're going to be this close to losing it right there. Right. And then that's another reason why the Freedom Amendment in Iowa is so important. Let's just say, for instance, that Pete, you're out walking the dog, something bad happens, somebody tries to take your life, and you defend yourself, and you draw an overzealous, let's say this is completely legal, okay, and you draw an overzealous prosecuting attorney and a really crappy jury, you know, because it's happened before. And they don't find for you in coordination and in reflection of Iowa code. And so you appeal this decision, you bounce it up, and when it gets to the state Supreme Court in Iowa, let's say that they come back and say, first of all, we're not going to hear your case, and you can live with an earlier verdict. And oh, by the way, while we're at it, since there's no right to keep and bear arms in Iowa state constitution, all these other pieces of code that you guys have been relying on, that's gone. And they make some sort of case law, or what we call this a court opinion, that now becomes something to be measured against and looked upon. So to me, that's scary, knowing that without the right to keep and bear arms, with strict scrutiny, mind you, because that's very important, without that being held in place in our state constitution, we are sitting around waiting for something bad to happen, and that's just not smart.
Right. We know it's a hole in our state right list of constitutional rights as well. Let's fill it. And for everybody out there who's listening, who's maybe coming to the Constitution or the Second Amendment, here's the individual Second Amendment for the first time, and new gun owners are really understanding what responsibility and rights are bestowed upon you.
Yeah.
Learn a little bit about history of when the Second Amendment has been trampled. Who's it hurting the most, and who's it hurt immediately when those rights are taken away? And it's not honestly going to be you or I, Michael. It's going to be people that are usually impoverished in some way, usually have seen the boot by many authorities in many ways.
Yeah.
And this is not just rural Iowa or rural America that needs this. It's more of those people, those individuals that are really discovering the Second Amendment right for the first time.
Agreed.
So all you new gun owners out there, this is a bunch of people been in the trenches all these years and have seen a lot of shenanigans. We're fighting for you guys just as much as we're fighting for us, because this Freedom Amendment is for everybody in Iowa, not just the rural people, not just the districts outside of Des Moines. It's for everybody, and everybody who's sitting there contemplating, am I going to vote party lines on something like this? Think twice. The largest surge of gun owners in Iowa have come from the Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Waterloo areas.
Yeah.
These are your constituents. You need to be looking at why they're voting with their dollars. And then when it comes to protecting those rights that they just used to spend money on, when you're protecting those as legislators, you need to vote in favor of this Freedom Amendment.
Agreed. It's kind of interesting that you put it like that, because I think that people look at issues like the right to keep and bear arms as if they were gun rights. And I will admit, I sometimes fall into that trap, and I use that phrase myself. But I know that it's fundamentally wrong, because guns don't have rights. They're little chunks of metal, wood, plastic, whatever they may be. But people have rights. Individuals have rights. Your basic civil rights, your human rights, are what we're talking about. And they're not something that you pick and choose. Everybody gets them by default, and you lose them through bad behavior and demonstrated bad behavior. So
yeah, these aren't blue rights or red rights.
No.
These are human rights. It's everybody's.
No. And the other thing that's really interesting about these is anytime that I talk with somebody who feels as if I shouldn't have, or thinks as if I shouldn't have this fundamental right, what I ask them is, well, what are you actually going to gain by taking it from me? And most people will give you blank stares. I'm like, no, I really want to understand this. You're taking something from me that you don't think I should have, but you actually absolutely get no gain from it, and there's no actual tangible value to you. So at the end of the day, you just don't want me to have something, and that really sounds like a poor plan. It's a poor idea, and you should never put yourself in a position where you take somebody's civil liberties from them. So
Right.
This is very simple for me.
Yeah. These liberties stack up with the rest of them. And if you infringe on one, you're really, take that same approach on everything else. So,
yeah.
Well, Google is, frankly, but we don't like that group. But on that sense, but the
as we use their platform.
I know, right? We appreciate what you're giving us, but please don't shut us down.
Yeah.
You stack it up against the rest of them. We start infringing on one, you're going to have other groups that start infringing on the ones that may be deferential. You may have some preference for First Amendment, Third Amendment, Fifth, 10th, 14th, 12th. We just don't pick and choose. A real constitutionalist would fight for all of them.
Yes.
On equal measure. And I think that's what really the Freedom Amendment does, put everything on equal ground once again, just so that whatever happens at the federal level, we have a firewall for what's best for Iowans, which I believe Second Amendment and all of them are, right?
Yeah. The firewall is a great way to describe it, because it is truly a firewall in that sense. And it also becomes a yardstick in which to be measured. So that's why we're very happy to have strict scrutiny in there, which I don't know if everybody understands properly. Strict scrutiny is basically the highest level of, scrutiny is the word, that judges would use when they're looking over a case and presiding. So basically, I had a person ask me Well, I think that strict scrutiny is too much. Won't it undo all the laws that are on the books? No, it hasn't done that in any other state. I don't imagine that it will, and that's not the intention here. So I want people to be put at rest by that. But the other thing that they need to consider is, again, going back to your basic civil rights, Pete, go ahead and make me a list of your basic human rights, your civil rights that you think don't deserve strict scrutiny. Pick those rights that you think that a judge should go ahead and monkey with, cajole, manipulate, or otherwise diminish or remove from you. Go ahead and make me a list of the things that I don't really care about those civil liberties or anybody else's. Go ahead and you can trample on those. So
you're setting some standards here. The language that's there starts to set the standard for the professionals that deal with laws. That'd be judges.
Yeah.
That'd be the people that look at it. Strict scrutiny means something different than just scrutiny, which means something different to judges and lawyers and people in that business than just best judgment.
Right.
You know, strict scrutiny means you better have a really good reason for taking this person's civil liberties away.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's a word and a series of words that have significant meaning, and without it, the bar is lower. The judge has a little more room to decide what kind of evidence or situations can be brought in to take away that civil liberty.
Yeah.
Right now in the state of Iowa, we rely to code written by unelected individuals. So laws passed, codes written, and then we're held to it. And most of them get tried, or at least tried in society, or sometimes tried in the court. We want to make sure there's a best standard out there.
Yeah.
For Second Amendment.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad that you took a few minutes today to visit with us about that. We're going to make a series of videos, and this is one of the first that we're putting together. I think this will air either third or fourth. But again, Pete Brownell, thank you for your time and your volunteerism. I've known you for a number of years now, personally and professionally, and I enjoy working with you. And I recognize your commitment to the community at large, Second Amendment and beyond. So thank you for your work, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it's our pleasure. Absolutely. Take care, guys.
Bye.